Jeremy Sochan for the San Antonio Spurs has become a hot topic of debate among the basketball world because of the experiment the Spurs are trying, putting Sochan at the point guard position and letting him go through his growing pains because he has never ever played the position in his life. And sometimes in sports, when you're talking sports with your buds or watching sports all the time and seeing forums, Reddit, whatever forum you go to talk basketball, sometimes you just gotta have a strong opinion and you gotta plant your flag in the ground to let people know where you stand. And if you're wrong down the road, you're wrong down the road, but you gotta have a firm stance on it. I think the Spurs should continue to play Jeremy Sochan at the point guard spot. And I think they would be insane to try and pull the plug now. And I'm not saying this because I'm trying to be contrarian to the popular view that Greg Popovich is insane for trying Jeremy Sochan at point guard and that he should stop and that it's ruining the development of the other players around him, especially Victor Wembanyama. I'm here to tell you that the Spurs should keep trying it, and eventually it'll pay dividends down the road. And I'm not expecting this take to be liked by a lot of people. I'm hoping that this video will age like fine wine years down the road when Sochan has a more refined palate when it comes to playmaking. But this is what development is all about. I get the concerns. I get that it is definitely rough watching Sochan play point guard at times. But this is what development is all about. I said in a few videos already that Jeremy Sochan, who by the way was the 9th overall pick in the 2022 NBA draft, that he's like moldable clay. He's 6'8". We don't really know what type of position he is. All we know is he's competitive. He's a big dude. He can move his feet well. And, he had an injury-riddled season last year, but whenever he's on the court, he is tasked with guarding the best players already, and he's learning that as well. And I just think it's worthwhile to see what you have in Sochan because, again, he is a lottery pick. And I understand the concerns about, wanting to put a real point guard next to Victor Wembanyama like Tre Jones. The lineup data with Tre Jones with the 4 other starters of Keldon Johnson, Devin Vassell, Victor, and Zach Collins is just absurd in terms of net rating, offensive rating, defensive rating compared to Sochan, who the lineup data when it comes to him with the starters is not so good. But a few things. 1, how are people so convinced that Tre Jones, is going to be the point guard of the future for the San Antonio Spurs? I like Tre Jones. The Jones bloodline basically means that you have a very good assist-to-turnover ratio, but if it means getting some really good development out of your 9th overall lottery pick, I think the experiment is worthwhile because Sochan has always been a nifty playmaker. He's really good at interior passes. He has shown there are some good things, I think, when the Spurs have played Sochan at point guard this year. Like, he can make a nice pass to the opposite corner, he can find cutters, and he's always been a nifty interior passer. He's just going to need to learn how to make an entry pass, which is one of my biggest pet peeves in the NBA, is that no one knows how to make a fucking entry pass anymore. But yes, there are going to be times where he misses people wide open under the basket. There are times where the tempo is just going to be off, and the Spurs won't get into their sets as fast as they should because Sochan, once again, is learning point guard at the NBA level after not playing it his entire life. But if we all acknowledge that this was going to be an experiment with a lot of growing pains, pulling the plug after a month of basketball is just short-sighted and impatient to me. Also, let me make the point that the Spurs were never going to win anything significant this year, even if Tre Jones was the starting point guard next to the other starters. This team is very young. They're still going to make a lot of mistakes, and they're probably going to be in the lottery this year. This whole year is about development and experimentation. And speaking of experimentation and development, people are worried about Victor Wembanyama and his development. Victor Wembanyama is going to be a superstar. He's going to get better regardless of the situation around him, especially if that's the type of player we project him to be. He's going to get better no matter what. Now, would Victor Wembanyama get some more easy baskets and find the ball in his spots easier if Trey Jones was in there? Sure. But I mean, Victor Wembanyama is already averaging nearly 20 points a game, over 8 rebounds a game, and over 2 blocks a game. Those are absurd for rookie numbers anyway, so I'm not sure how his development is being stunted. Also, if you listen to how Wemby and Greg Popovich talk about the type of development they want to see from Wembanyama himself throughout the year, they're already letting him freelance. So starting Trey Jones at point guard to me isn't going to change anything in terms of Wembanyama freelancing by himself and, stunning his development. I think the trajectory would be the same. Now to Sochan himself. Yes, it's going to be rough at times, but he is averaging over 4 assists a game. And to me, if we're going to spend the whole year putting him at point guard, let him go through his lumps. Let him go through the growing pains of playing point guard. I don't think Jeremy Sochan is going to be the future point guard of the San Antonio Spurs. But if we're looking down the road, if you can mold Jeremy Sochan into a Boris Diaw type player or an even Draymond Green type player, and I know it's insane to compare somebody to a future Hall of Famer, but somebody in that mold who is 6'6", 6'7", 6'8", but can handle the ball, is normally going to have a smaller matchup and is a nifty playmaker. If Jeremy Sochan can figure out where to play make, where to find his spots, how to get easier shots for himself as well as his teammates, then I think this experiment is worthwhile because I think down the road it's going to pay off. I don't think he's going to be the starting point guard in, say, 2026, but if he gets these reps at point guard and is able to improve playmaking, setting the tempo, it'll help him in terms of being a tertiary playmaker down the road. I think the Spurs should continue this experiment and, get Devin Vassell some, playmaking opportunities here and there as well. But this notion that they're stunning the development of the other players, I mean, if you look at the stat lines, just the raw stat lines and the film, Devin Vassell is more efficient this year. Keldon Johnson, this is the highest 2-point percentage since his rookie year where he only played 17 games. Victor Wembanyama, like I said, he's putting up crazy numbers for a rookie. Zach Collins, I mean, he is struggling shooting the 3-ball this year, but he is still having a career year across the board. I expect the 3-point percentage to get somewhere back in the 35-36% range, but I don't see any hindrance of development from the Spurs' younger players. I think this entire year is a development and experimentation year for everybody, and Jeremy Sochan included, especially when you spend draft capital, spending the 9th pick on a player like Sochan. It's imperative that the Spurs try to get the best out of him. I know Wemby is the important guy to develop, but like I said, if he's on the trajectory we all believe he's going to be at, he's going to get better regardless, and it's important to develop the other important players around him, and I think Sochan is one of those guys, along with Devin Vassell. So the Spurs should just ride this out. I really can't get a pulse on how San Antonio fans feel about it, but I feel like they kind of understand why Pop is doing it, especially, they've watched Pop for damn near 30 years, and so I think they understand why Pop is doing this. I think a lot of the criticism comes from people who, let's be honest, didn't watch the Spurs last year or watched very little Spurs last year and are now tuning in because rightfully so they want to see Victor Wembanyama play, and then they see that Victor Wembanyama is being missed on mismatches in the post or whatever, and people are just fucking freaking out about it. I think it's impatient to pull the plug this early. At the very least, you go until the trade deadline, but either way, if Jeremy Sochan gets some growth out of this and he becomes a very important player for the Spurs down the road, like a 9th overall lottery pick should expect to be, then it's all the more reason to keep going with this experiment. And when you look at the Spurs draft assets down the road as well, I mean, if the Spurs end up getting another high lottery pick out of this and another good player out of this to develop, then what? Afterwards, we're going to be saying how smart the Spurs are for whatever lottery pick they make to add on top of the young talent. I mean, you can't have it both ways, but either way, The Spurs should definitely keep doing whatever they can to pull the most out of Sochan, and I'm sure the most sensible Spurs fans understand that, even if it's very stinky to watch right now. Again, we are in month 1 of the NBA season, and he's never played the point guard position in his life. So we should give it time, we should be patient, and the Spurs keep doing you.